Well, I think that most people who know me probably think, oh, well, Isaac, you're not a Marxist. And, I mean, it could be right, but it could also be wrong in the sense that, I mean, I'm someone who's very much, when I first started making works, in fact, one of the reasons why, Mexico has a very important place for me is because of the fact that Trotsky came to Mexico. And so, in fact, I wasn't a Marxist, I was a Trotskyite in my early youth years. So, but I should say that I think with Marx, or you could say the reason why, someone like David Harvey or even someone like James Corbyn in the British political scene has come about is because I think there's something in this kind of older generation that a younger generation, because it's with the younger generation that these questions are resonating with, even rather than the 68 generation. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to do the reading of Das Kapital was just to hear how it sounds. What does it sound like? To go back to the source. And I think, because of course I hadn't read Das Kapital either, and not many people I know had. So, and the interesting thing about when it was being read was that essentially, Marx is a philosopher, and he's basically analysing, quite closely reading what's happening in Britain at the time of his writing. He's given a description, a very vivid description of poverty, of the way that capital is working, the way that the factory works. So it's like an analysis. It's very close reading, and it's very interesting to have that kind of resonate, and then to think about this being written in England. And of course, the other thing, or the irony, is that if Engels wasn't a factory owner, that Das Kapital would have never been written. So the question of capital was also very important to Karl Marx, because somebody had to pay for it, right? So I think sort of there's that, and I think also, and it's a bit like somebody has to, well, you could say that someone has to pay for my films, so the idea of capital isn't escaping one at all, not for 1 second. But I think also you could say that, yes, in Venice it was quite controversial. Some people felt it was very didactic, preaching, people feeling that they were kind of sophisticated enough to not be kind of preached to. But I thought it was very interesting the fact that people were very intolerant, and in some instances, towards the idea of this being read, and the fact that this is something which is interesting for a younger generation, because why would the success of Jeremy Corbyn, which has infused thousands and thousands of young people back to the Labour Party, be happening at this particular moment in time? So kind of, I think for me there's a kind of connection between these two aspects. Certainly I think for me it was very interesting to have this question of language, which I think Ocqui and Wezo was trying to work through in this arena program, with having the sonic be part of the experience, of the aesthetical experience. And so I think, this was trying to perform this sort of intervention. If it works or not is another question, whether the Das Kapital readings really work or not. Maybe if I restage them, I might want to do something else. So, but it was very much thinking about that and looking at those in relationship to the capital work that I had made with others that David Harvey espouses. So you could say that, with the collapse in 2008, with the uncertainty of capital, with the possibility that Britain will leave Europe, with the possibility that Scotland would then leave England, and the question of banking systems, all of these things, how they're going to resonate, are very interesting. And I think perhaps in Harvey, what he's talking about is really, at the same time, a bit like Marx, trying to look at how capital functions, and to say, or to pose the question, is it the right system? Does it work for us, really? You know, who's it working for? And I think that's, you know, it's a sort of question, basically, and it's a question that's been thrown up by the kind of fragility of the lives that we're living and cohabiting at the moment.